The code fragment below is intended to display odd if the positive number num is odd. Which of the following can be used to replace missing condition so that the code fragment will work as intended? So this code fragment will display odd when the number num is odd. And in the case that the number num is even, meaning it's not odd, then it will not display odd. So here we have this if statement with a condition inside and the display odd line here inside the if statement. So only in the case that this condition is true will the if statement display odd. In the case that the number is even, it will not display odd. So odd numbers are really just numbers that are not divisible by 2. Meaning when you divide a number by 2, and if that number is odd, then that means there will be a remainder. There's going to be a remainder. Even numbers, on the other hand, are divisible, meaning when you divide an even number by 2, say you have an even number like 6, and you divide that by 2, you get a whole number. There's no remainder. But if you were to divide, say, an odd number by 2, like 7, we know that 2 fits into 7 3 times. So if we have 2 fits into 7 3 times, but then the remainder would be 1 because 2 times 3 is 6, but we can't add another 2 because that would go over the value of 7. So that means there's 1 left over. So there would be a remainder. And that means, so 6 is even since it is completely divisible, and 7 is odd since it is not divisible. So using this knowledge about how even and odd numbers work, we can replace the missing conditions so that this display odd is only run when the number num is odd. So if we look at answer choice A, it says we should replace missing condition with num modulus with 1 equals 0. So modulus really just says find the remainder when you divide this term by this term here. So say num was equal to 7 and we divided it by 1, we would see that 1 fits into 7 times. There would be no remainder. In this case, the remainder would be 0 because there's nothing left over. And that's the case every time when you use a modulus of 1, because 1 fits into every single number. It would just be 1 times that number. So that means modulus of 1, no matter what the number is, will always return 0. So this is not going to allow our code to work as intended because we only want the if statement to return true, meaning return a value 1, if the number is odd. And in this case, this will always return just 0, no matter what the number is. So using num modulus 1 is not going to work in this case. The same for answer choice B. It says num modulus 1 equals 1. This will never be true. The modulus of 1 can never be non-zero, because no matter what number you use for num, it's always going to be divisible by 1 with a remainder of 0. Right? Okay. C says num modulus 2 equals 0. So what this means is that when you divide num by 2, the remainder equals 0. And we know that when the remainder equals 0, that means that the number we're dealing with is even. So that means that when num modulus 2 returns a value of 0, then that means that the number we're looking at has a remainder of 0. which means that this returns true only when the number is even. Even, then this returns true, which allows the display odd to work or to run. This is the opposite of what we wanted. We didn't want display odd to run when number is even. We only wanted to run when it's odd, meaning when num modulus 2 has a non-zero remainder, because if it had a zero remainder, then that means the number is even. So C cannot be correct. D says num modulus 2 equals 1. So this is saying that when we divide num by 2, we get some number. We'll just say, I'll just put a number k here. Depends on what number is, but the remainder is 1. Now we know that when the remainder is 1, that means that the number we're dealing with is odd. And when this is equal to 1, meaning this is an odd number, then we return true because both sides are equal. And since num is now found to be odd, since the remainder is 1, then the if statement returns true and we display odd. However, in the case that num is even, num modulus 2 would return 0, and 0 is not equal to 1. So the if statement would return a false value or a 0, which would tell it to not run whatever's inside the if statement and just exit the if statement. So that means that when num is odd, the display statement will occur, but if the number is even, the display statement will not occur, since only odd numbers can have a modulus with 2 equal to 1. So D is the correct answer.